Give us the sales pitch on this IRR approach, because being that you're buy and hold and we're buy and hold, this IRR is kind of just a hypothetical. And
Totally.
And for a while we wouldn't even advertise it, because we'd say, guys, we're not flipping apartments. We're not selling this in 4 years. There's your high IRR. But what you're not counting is the 1 or 2 refinances over 10 or 12 years. And now you're making cash on $0 in, but we're only going to actually get a high IRR after we sell. So what we've done, just to preface my question to explain to you what I'm trying to ask, is we've done a hypothetical year 10 sale and said, if we sold in year 10, this would be your IRR. I want you to know our goal is to refinance, return as much as 100% of your capital back, and have you ride off into the sunset for the next 30 years, getting infinite cash on cash return. But the IRR is so popular on Google and all of these websites and syndicators, we have to give a hypothetical 10 years. So how are you approaching that IRR discussion?
Yeah, great question. And I think it was popularized because a lot of large funds, Blackstone, Carlyle, these larger equity groups, that's what they target, right? They want a 15% IRR, and you see the waterfalls that they offer if you guys have ever gotten a term sheet. And I think that less experienced syndicators, when this whole syndication and capital raising kind of idea exploded, people latched on to what the big professionals have done, and that's what they look at is IRR, which is really the net present value of your return. But what they miss out on is exactly that. A lot of these big groups like Carlyle, right, they're merchant builders. So of course they're going to look for IRR, right? They want a 15% plus IRR, but that's because they're building and selling within a 3 to 5 year period. So if you're raising capital and holding for a long time, you can only project an IRR if you have an expected sale and a projected sale price. And so it is really speculative. I mean, all IRR is speculative, right? It's your cash flow, your discount rate, with expected appreciation over a certain time. And so that's what we've done. We've done something similar because a lot of investors want to see an IRR. We've just said, hey, look, at year 10, here, if we sold it at our certain splits with everything included, here's your expected IRR. Now, we always preface it with, but we may sell it at 10 years. There's a possibility, but we always put a plus sign on the end, because if this is a cash cow and we don't want to sell and we can refinance it and give back a significant amount of capital, we will do so, and we'll hold it even longer. So I'm not a huge fan of IRR, but what I'm a huge fan of is DSCR. DSCR is the debt service coverage ratio, and a lot of people don't talk about that. A lot of LPs don't understand it, but that's basically the amount of debt payments you can pay with your net income. And that's where a lot of people are going to and will continue to get in trouble, is that they over leveraged it. They had a low DSCR, like a 1.15, which means you can make 1.15 payments with your net income. And now that rents aren't increasing and the price isn't as much and interest rates went up, now their DSCR is under 1, and that's when you're underwater. So that's a metric that I can hold heavily on.
Yeah, and the lenders are really honing in on that DSCR as well. Fannie, Freddie, all those are getting bumped up, and they're just really tightening up, which makes sense.
Right, and they should.
I agree, especially with what's going on right DSCR. Now. What's that painting behind you? What's that all about?
Just a random painting. Bought it. Honestly, I bought it at Fred Meyer. It was like $40. Thought it looked cool, and
it's Picasso.
I was waiting for a story behind it. Maybe it's like your future is endless and to the mountains or something.
Actually, I liked it. I'll tell you actually a story about it a little bit. So I like the bright colors, but there's this local artist here, Jeff, and he's an incredible artist. I've loved his paintings, but his paintings are like $5,000 to $50,000.
Wow.
And so I got that one, but that is a placeholder for when I buy a Jeff painting someday. I haven't talked myself into spending too much capital on art yet, but it'll happen.
Tell him to sell you a piece of art if he agrees to roll the profit in on one of your builds.
Ooh. He probably would.
I like that idea. Tell me the importance of branding.
I mean, branding's everything, right? Branding's what the community, the people around you think about you. And so I don't think you have to necessarily be we all know a Brandon Turner, right? I don't think you have to be a Brandon Turner to build a massively successful syndication company. But, I think we'll take Brandon Turner as an example. What he's built is a brand that people know, like, and trust. People love Brandon because he's a truly good human being. And so, right, we're in his mastermind because he's simply a good person. And I think that's what branding comes down to is whatever you put out there as a syndication company, or if you have a personal brand, it's whatever you give back out is what you're going to give, back in return. So if you're a giver of knowledge, a giver of everything, you're going to get a lot in return. And it's proven time and time again. But branding's, also your reputation. And so it's important. I mean, if you do a horrible deal, or you commit fraud, or you aren't transparent about something, that's your brand, and that's going to come back on you and really affect your ability to become successful.
Yeah, I have this saying, and it's that you can make money forever. There's always an opportunity to make more money, and I think oftentimes people are trying to, either chase expenses without worrying about how much they can increase their, top end, trying to protect their downside. But there's one thing that you cannot create more of, which is your reputation. You really have one shot at it. It's very, very rare that somebody goes through, a catastrophe, loses their reputation because they didn't put their all into it and come back to be a success story. And oftentimes you see people, getting foreclosed on, et cetera. And it's because they don't want to go down the hard route, because they're trying to save basically their butts and not, putting the effort forward of making additional capital. And they're willing to, kind of throw their reputation out the door, which, so I'm glad you brought that up in branding, because I think there's honestly nothing more important.
Yeah, well, right. We should highlight one thing real quick. Branding's so important that you can be foreclosed on multiple times, even file bankruptcy, and become the president of the United States of America. And that's not even a joke. That is seriously because of branding.
Yeah.
100%. It's time and time again, right? It's branding and reputation are different, right? And a lot about reputation, though, is it doesn't mean you can't fail. It doesn't mean you can't make a mistake. It doesn't mean you can't invest into something with other people's capital and lose it, right? I mean, that's the last thing you want to do, but unfortunately, it does happen. But where the reputation comes in is, were you truthful? Were you honest to your investors about it? And then did you do everything you possibly could to fix the situation or to remake their money? I mean, look at, who was it? Bill Ackman. He owns a massive hedge fund. He lost billions of dollars and made a bad investment. And now he's made it all back and done incredibly well and owns one of the most successful hedge funds in the world. And he at one time almost lost everything halfway through his career.
Mind blowing.
And one of our presidents, right? He filed bankruptcy multiple times, but he's seen as successful because the majority of what he did was succeed to an extent, right?
What's the guy's name that called the 08-09 crash, the movie about him?
Oh, The Big Short.
Yeah, Michael. But so all you need, the point of what I'm saying is you only need to make contact once, because people forget, like, he made calls like that before that never connected. Then he got that right and made a lot of money. And I was listening to something recently from a trusted source. I don't remember who it was, but he's like 0 for 19 since the 08-09 crash. But I mean, he's a genius. So it just shows that you don't always get you don't get it right every time.
He's probably 0 for 19 because the government's printed so much money. It's hard to understand exactly what's going on. Everything that you can possibly predict has gone the opposite way because it's just fueled by endless money printer.
It's tough.
Hey, so something again I want to talk about, which we started the podcast about, is the idea of self-belief. How do you define that, and what are some things that you do to increase your self-belief? It's something that I think until the age, honestly, probably not the past, 3, 4, 5, 6 years that I really understood that there are these things that you can control inside of yourself. I basically thought of everything as, your intelligence is your intelligence. So that's going to garner how far you can go, the type of jobs that you can get, the degrees that you can qualify for, where you're situated in life, what your background was. But more and more I realize, and the more successful people that I meet, it's, it's creating the conditions around you to be successful.
Right. I think it's exactly that part right there. Surround yourself with people that can show you that you should believe in yourself. Surround yourself. I mean, I'm 27 years old and I joined the 50, which was an expensive check for me to write. And I joined it because I knew that I have a limited belief in myself, but I get told time and time again, like, Anthony, like, you know a lot about multifamily. You can do this, right? And it's hard for me to take that in and to understand it. But if you surround yourself with people who are telling you that you are a badass, but also showing you how you can believe in yourself, how they believed in themselves, and to build what they've built, it changes something in you. You start opening up what I think the true difference is when you open up a true abundance mindset is when you get rid of the limiting self-belief, right? So when you go from, man, I'm not sure I can do this, to just fully understanding, like, anything you set out to do is possible in today's world, which is not easy to understand. There's people in our 50 group who live by that every day. And it's, I get to see it, I get to experience, and I get to live with them through it to an extent. And it shows you what's possible. And then, through time, you just learn how to do it. And that's what I've understood. I mean, for me, 5 years ago was a lot worse in believing that I can do it than it is today. And me in 5 years from now, gosh, the whole world's my oyster. So I'm excited to see what I do personally.
I think you see that abundance mentality from people, the people teaching the abundance mentality. I think you see that from people who at one time did not have it themselves. Because I can't explain. I'm sure that I'm now become annoying to my friends and family because I want to talk about real estate and all the opportunities that people can succeed in the financial world. But like, I never knew it was possible. And so I want to tell everybody because I want to explain how awesome it is. And it really is possible for other people. And it's just hard to explain. You see that fire in those 50, the group you're a part of or whatever. Usually in my experience, you see the fire from members who at one time didn't have it themselves. And they want to basically proselytize. They want to be like, listen to me, you can do this. And that's so powerful.
Right. And I think the way you really get rid of that limiting self-belief is surrounding yourself with those people. I mean, I spent a lot of yesterday with a gentleman who started as any of us do, right? And then started building single family homes and then saved up enough money to build his first, 30 unit. And today he's 62, owns over $1 billion in assets now. He's got, ownership in 2 Global Express jets. I mean, he's as wealthy as any of us could dream of. And he started just like any of us. And that's exactly what he said, was just abundance, just understanding, like, if I can do it, you can do it, Anthony. And they always say, oh, you're far smarter than I am. Yeah. But just listening to their stories, it changes something in you because you realize, like, this guy's no different than I am, right? I mean, I probably know things that he doesn't to an extent, and he did it. There's literally no reason, especially in today's world. He didn't have Facebook or iPhones or any of the technology we do now. And if he can do it, damn well I can do it.
Love it.
Yeah. And I think it's parsing things down to smaller problems. People look at, they'll look at somebody incredibly successful. They'll be like, okay, that guy, Anthony's building, $50 million of real estate. And they get so lost in where to start when really the first step is just to make any first step. Alex Hormozi says that, the first time you deal with a problem, it's a big problem. You may stew on it. You may sleep with it. You may take hours. You may find counsel in it. You may never solve the problem because you're scared to confront it. But once you do, and you encounter that problem again, it becomes easier. And then it becomes easier. And then 3 years later, when those issues come up, it's no longer a problem. I think I remember the first time I was trying to get a property under contract, I didn't really know what a purchase agreement was. I was doing this all off market. Like, this was like, I've got to find a purchase agreement. Is this legal for me to fill this out? There was 1,000 questions that were associated with it. Now it's like, We fill out purchase agreements all the time. It's no longer a problem. And I think that it's really confronting these things, asking experts, I think all the time. Do not be afraid to ask the individuals that have more experience or are smarter than you, the mentors that you can count on. Go to them and they can cut down the time, but you really have to just face problems and work through them. And the more you work through them, the more likelihood of success you'll get to.
100%. Everything is figure outable. And if you figure it out, then done. On to the next thing, right? And a lot of people talk about failure. I mean, I'm sure you guys have lost dozens and dozens of deals and lost money. And it's easy to stew on that stuff. But man, I'm so happy today that I lost every deal that I have and every penny that I've lost in due diligence or paying legal fees that I shouldn't have or anything is just lessons that make you far more successful. And so, they're not necessarily failures, but all those things that you're talking about that you stew on, they're just lessons and part of the process. And then you don't repeat them and you make a pretty damn good business out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, everybody's always asking what more can you do? And typically it's kind of what less can you do? You focus on, you refine your skills and you do those things and you repeat them over and over again. And you don't get lost in the noise of all the distractions.
Right. And and I think people even get lost in distractions of replacing yourself and hiring too many people also. I mean, look at what Elon Musk did to Twitter, right? I mean, he fired half the people and it's still running, right? The guy I just spent with, he's building, he's almost building 800 units right now. And there's like 4 people on his development team that do all this stuff. And he's got a management team and someone manages his management team. He has basically nothing to do with that. And then he's got a guy that manages his construction team and subs everything out. And they keep it lean. And they've got, like I said, they've never really raised money and they've got thousands of units that they've all built. And so that's the other coin is like people, I think it's, trending right now to like replace your time constantly, which you should. And I think I'm not saying to not do it, but I also think people go far too far in that they're spending all their time trying to replace their time instead of just building systems and processes and hiring 1 or 2 people that are really good at what they do and then replaces the majority of the time.
Yeah, so that is a really good question. It's something I've struggled with because I used to be the one that did everything and then started scaling a large team. And I noticed, I'm saying before we started, whatever. So, I basically did everything from, finding a deal, putting it under contract to managing the property to leasing the units. And it's like, okay, this is not sustainable. Whereas like, right. Okay, I had, in the very beginning, it's like I had 92 units and I'm doing literally everything, every phone call. It's like, okay, I need to find somebody. And then I got to a point where I started hiring too many people and things started getting lost in the shuffle, meaning that, either productivity went down or the accountability wasn't there. And we leaned out really heavily. So what is your thoughts on that? I mean, going forward as Anthony grows, do you have a hire that you're looking for an executive assistant? Do you like keeping some of those high knowledge skills with you? And how do you determine which of those tasks you want to let go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, one of the books that I've read 3 times, I'm actually going to read it again, is 10X is easier than 2X. But the philosophy there, of course, replace what you're, spending 80% of your time on. For me, yeah, I think an executive assistant is a necessary person to hire on my team, just because I still, I do a lot of the tedious tasks and whatnot that could be replaced, like being on more podcasts, right? Or setting up meetings with investors, little things like that I think it's not a crazy high income job. And then, I think that there's certain things you could replace that are highly incentivized, but I think that people, they think, hey, I need more cold callers, right? And they hire like 3 people and then there's not enough work to go around, but they're all doing something, right? And I think that's where it gets lost in the shuffle is they just hire too many people. Right. I mean, we can manage our developments right now, but if we add on 3 or 4 more, we might hire a vice president of development that manages that for us, but we're still actively doing something, right? I mean, real estate really isn't rocket science. Once you buy the asset and you have it, or you build the asset, you have a lease stabilized, you kind of put a methodology to work, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort, right? You might have reporting with your bank, and you might, have weekly or bi-weekly meetings with your property manager. But if it's a good asset and you are managing it, or you have a manager that's managing it correctly, it's not rocket science, to be completely honest.
Yeah. Are you guys doing in-house management? Are you guys vertically integrated?
We're not yet, no. We are, we've got third party.
Okay. And you said, are you doing the asset management for that, or somebody on your team is?
The asset management is one of my business partners manages that. So we have weekly meetings with all of our property managers. So we have different property managers for Idaho, Montana, and Central Oregon, just how it works. And so my business partner meets with them weekly, goes over financials, makes sure leases are going well, makes any important decisions if we need to offer more concessions, if we need to cut concessions, those kind of decisions there. And then eventually, as our company grows, we will bring property management in-house.
Okay. What's your goal for the next 5 years?
Yeah, we'd like to surpass 1,000 units under management, which is, basically finishing what we have being built now, and then basically adding on probably another 50 to 100 million with that. And then really launching our acquisition side and scaling out that. So we've, like I said, we've been building a lot, and we'll continue to do. We've bought land that we're going to build with investors, but over the next couple of years, and certainly by 5 years, we want a machine humming that is bringing us acquisitions. We want to expand into Wyoming, into Utah, into potentially some markets in Nevada, potentially some markets in Arizona, and just kind of grow out of Coeur d'Alene into other high growth markets that offer kind of unique opportunities.
All right. Jump to the last section.
We shall.
All right, Anthony, we got the final session, which is the final three with CNC. These are the final three questions with Chris and Colin. Right. Some zingers here. Do you want to start off?
Daily routines. What's something that gets you going? It doesn't have to be a morning, but just something you have to do every day to be successful.
Gym. Like I wake up and either go to the gym or go for, right now I've been running a lot. I'm gonna do a marathon in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and so I've been waking up and running 6 to plus miles, and or going to the gym. I think that getting your body moving is incredibly important. And then second thing, which has been more recent, is really refining my diet. Really just cutting. I don't eat any gluten anymore, and it's I'm not allergic to it, but my body has sensitivity to it. And when I cut it, man, your mental clarity is 10x better. My energy is better. Just everything about my life feels better when I eat well. So those are the two biggest things in my life right now.
Yeah, I was because I did a whole biohacks type thing. That's the actual company. And when I had spoke to the doctors, they basically said that everybody gets inflamed from gluten. Like there's really no redeeming properties from it. And it is crazy now. So I rarely have gluten. And usually when it is, it's, a cookie of some sort or some pasta. And man, the brain fog that comes over is almost instantaneous. It's real. It's like, why did I just do that? Like it slows you down for like a good hour and a half, 2 hours.
Because cookies are awesome.
It's crazy. I agree. I'm not saying I'm never going to have gluten. It'll probably be a similar situation there. I just have it on occasion, and I know I'm going to feel like dog shit after. But what's crazy is I used to have, I'm tall, I'm like just over 6'3", and I've had lower back pain for years and years. Not crazy lower back, but sometimes it come and go. And since I've been cutting out gluten the last year, and really heavily cutting out gluten the last 8 weeks or so, back pain gone. Zero, no inflammation in my back, no back pain at all.
That's impressive.
Crazy to me because I've lived with it for years and years and years. And so many people live with lower back pain that I talk to, but they're not willing to change their diet. And they just don't believe that cutting out gluten and reducing your inflammation can cure your back pain.
It's all inflammation. I would assume that, I'm not a doctor here, but I have noticed the same thing. When my diet is super clean, my body does not hurt at all. Everything moves better, flexibility is better, sleeps better. It makes sense. What you put in the vehicle is, the fuel for moving you forward. Okay. What is the most difficult or challenging situation you've encountered while being in real estate?
Yeah, great question. Let me think about that. I would say probably the last year. I mean, it's been development in general is difficult to raise capital for the most part, especially from, syndicated accredited investors, because, it has a story and whatnot, but it takes time. Like we talked about, you're not going to see cash flow until it's completed. You might have a pref, or you might have, certain other increments that try to make up for it. But in all reality, the only way you're getting cash flow is if we raise extra capital and then basically distribute that capital back and add it into the overall building cost. So it's difficult, right? In the last year, basically when interest rates started going up, capital became even more difficult. And we were doing a project in Bend, Oregon, and Oregon in general is a blue state. And the asset is great. The yield on cost is great. Everything about it is phenomenal. But simply because the market changed and it was a blue state, it was incredibly difficult to raise capital for that. And so we had to put in long days, extra hours, and overcome that. And we did, and we overcame it. It's being built right now. But that was probably the most challenging, like long-term, just like stress. We had bought the land already, and we just needed a little bit more capital. But it was like prolonged stress of just like, come on, let's get this baby done, that I've dealt with. So we haven't lost any assets. We have not lost a penny of our capital's money. Our investors' money. We haven't had anything in foreclosure. We haven't had anything distressed. Actually, another project, we had our site superintendent, the guy leading one of our projects in 2020, passed away from COVID, and he was managing the whole thing. And then our GC quit on us, so we had to go on site and manage that for a couple months. That was another fun one. We had to go through, and we had to bring another GC in like halfway through the project to finish it for us.
Man, but you guys got up and did it.
We did it. We brought coolers to the job site every day, and the framers were out there. His name was Jorge, and Jorge was a framer, and we built a great relationship. And he liked Red Bulls and Gatorade, and we just brought him a cooler and said, "You keep on following these plans right here." We have some obviously construction, but none of us have ever owned a GC company. I mean, we have the ability to manage, and we kept it going. And then we hired another GC, and they took over, and it finished and lease stabilized and cash flowing to this day.
That's awesome.
So you're 18, you graduate high school. Knowing what you know now, what's the first thing you do?
Gosh, if I would probably, so two things actually. I think a lot of people talk poorly about college, but if I could get into a top college, I would, and I would work my ass off, and I would network my ass off. Now that I see through a larger lens, and I know what I want to do, and it's, build a large company, your network, everyone says your network is your net worth, but man, if you can get into a Yale or a Stanford, right? And in whatever, if they're liberal arts colleges, whatever, but the network and the people that go there, man, you could have capital sources for ages and ages and ages if you build a network. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever read the book, What It Takes by Steven Schwarzman. He's the CEO of and the founder of Blackstone. But the network that this man built at Yale is a lot of the reason Blackstone is what it is today. It's one of the best books I've ever read. But that's probably what I would do. I would try to get into the most elite school possible. Not really care about the schooling, because I don't think you're going to learn a lot getting a degree in finance or a degree in marketing, which I got both of those. But if you can learn from people and you can, meet their parents of some of these people, you truly have a group now of mentors that will help guide you through the rest of my life. Recently, one of my friends got his MBA from Stanford. He dropped out of college dropped out of high school, got his GED, went to college, dropped out of college, and he's very successful and just sold a business for hundreds of millions of dollars. And he got his MBA about 3 or 4 years ago, and over 25% of his clients were just referrals while he was getting his MBA. So he made about $100 million from his MBA program, just from the referrals of the people that he met in Stanford, right? I mean, he had Condoleezza Rice in his class, like these crazy people. So if I had to do it all over again, that's what I would do. I wouldn't go to like a simple state school. I would go for the top. And if I couldn't get into the top, then I'd probably get my real estate license and just start grinding and start selling as much real estate as possible and then building up my portfolio just a lot quicker.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Awesome. Anthony, I appreciate it. Thanks, man. Thanks for jumping on, dude. You are incredibly impressive. I know there's a lot more to your story and everything, but what you're doing is, I don't know. It always has my head turning. So I appreciate all the calls that we've jumped on. The marketing campaign that you mentioned, we have one going out. So I'll have to tell you the results of that, about the letter campaign for investment. So I really love that idea. How can everybody get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably most active actually on LinkedIn, just Anthony Walker. You can find me on there. I'm on Instagram, Anthony Walker 18, or my website's www.cornerstonecommercialinvestments.com. So any of those places.
Right on. Thanks, man. Appreciate you, brother.
All right.